But I want to get this across to you. I did feel a loving concern for him. I did feel that. So I knew I was supposed to stop and talk with him. But I got nervous. I got shy. But I was afraid to express it directly. You know, I'm a man. He's a man. I've been kind of shut down emotionally most of my life. So my words were all over the dartboard, throwing them all over the dartboard like an amateur dart thrower. Good intentioned, but inefficient and likely ineffective that any actually hit the bullseye in his life. I was just hoping that something would hit the bullseye. That's why Jesus had previously told me about taking time to really see deeply by the Spirit for the knowledge, right, of the actual heart issue. Don't treat symptoms, he says. You don't even know what is. You kind of look at it as symptoms. You're kind of getting something out of the conversation, but you're trying to treat symptoms. You got to go to the heart of the matter, and that's going to take the Holy Spirit to heal him and ask for wisdom for just the specific logos message that I need to give to him through my rhema words to heal it. There's a lot of verses on this, so look at the description. This requires listening to Eric, right? Very intently. You have to really listen. You can't be in your own thoughts. But at the same time, this is the tricky part. This is the tricky part I'm learning. Internally, within you, asking the Holy Spirit of Jesus to reveal the heart issue. What's really the issue behind all those words? Because words can be very deflecting. There's demonic activity to deflect you or distract you away from what's really going on. So you have to look past the words, the Lord told me. There's a lot of defense mechanisms in the flesh, too, as you get closer. And I learned this from a counselor, Elizabeth Brown. And I saw it in action, big time, even in myself. So you have to get to the heart issue, the heart of the matter. And then you can bring Christ's rhema word, his singular, sometimes it only takes one word, singular rhema word. Romans chapter 1, verse 17. Faith comes from hearing the singular, no, that's Romans 10, verse 17. Rhema word, the singular rhema word of Christ is all it takes if you hear that to get faith. And yet, in context, their rhema words, plural, of the preachers are going out into all the world. And they are giving a logos message, which is, in context, the gospel logos message. The gospel logos message of Christ's love. And so, see how it all comes together. But in all those words of mine, hopefully I'm praying that you'll hear the rhema word of Christ. Because that's what gives you faith. And that's what heals you. By your faith, you are healed, Jesus said. So, you got to listen for the heart issue. That's what the Lord's telling me. As I'm intently listening to them. Praying, show me the real issue. What do you want to say? Ask, seek, and knock. Jesus had previously told me this, that the power of love will enable you to see right through into their heart. If you have that love bubbling up within you. Exactly in the same way he did in his ministry. He said, I never wasted words. I waste a lot of words. I've been a teacher for 25 years in music and usually talking over the drums. So my website, I'll put it down in the description, is got so much teaching. I'm just not usually in the spirit, usually in the flesh, trying to talk over drums. Too many words. To follow him, Jesus, as a disciple is to minister in the same way. But now Jesus is saying in this dream that if for some reason, because I've struggled being able to burrow down into their heart, that is tricky. I'm really praying to learn this. But he showed it to me, so I know I need to learn it. He says, it's taking a little pressure off me, but now Jesus is saying that if for some reason, as you are listening to Eric or whoever, you do not get insight into his heart to minister to him specifically, then do not be afraid. So I was getting afraid. I was getting nervous, so I kept throwing out more darts. That's how we do. We talk more when we get nervous. And resort to the scattered dart throwing, like I tend to do, hoping one dart of truth will hit the bullseye if I throw enough darts. This is as effective He's actually saying ineffective, as the definition of the Greek word hamartia, or harmatia, which is, we get this word in English, sin, which doesn't really mean anything to anybody. But the Greek word means a lot. It means missing the mark or the target, the dartboard, missing the entire dartboard, let alone the bullseye, of God's holy and pure character, and consequently his will for us. So this is, if we're not even hitting the target is God's character and his will. So it's not hitting the target is sin. It's not hitting the target of God's character or will. So this throwing of darts at something and hitting the wall and people and trees behind you and whatever, poking my couch here, my recliner, oh boy, very ineffective. Perfect or completed as I desired love, perfect love of Jesus within me can cast out all fear. And he reminded me of that. He goes, if you get into my love and you just focus on the love that you're feeling towards Eric or whoever, then that is going to push away fear. It casts that out, right? That perfect or completed. It's what he desires for us. That's what he means by perfect. It's not flawless, but it's what he desires for us. You know, how many of us can be flawless? That's not really the meaning of the word. It means to be complete. And instead, it can give me a bold confidence. There's verses for all this, which Jesus had. He wasn't trembling. He wasn't timid. And so there's a lot of verses about this. Paul reminds Timothy to not be timid because there's a power of love. And there is in Timothy, that section, I think it's 1 Timothy, there's a real powerful verse on this. There's a power of love. 2 Timothy 1:7. There's a power of love. And in Greek, they can link two words together, power coupled to love. And that really means the power of love. So there we have it. The power of love, 2 Timothy 1:7, is not this timidity or fear, because he was supposed to be preaching the gospel. That was his gift, a gift of evangelism. By the laying on of hands during his water baptism, when he confessed his faith. This is the way the early church received the gifts of the Holy Spirit. They got it at the water baptism. This was all lost by the Catholic Church after about 225 AD. So he says, when you feel this love in my heart bubble up from within you, like the overflow of the Holy Spirit, as this artesian, spring-fed well. It's a well. It's not just a cistern hewn out of the dirt like Jeremiah talks about. You build cisterns, and they're just holes in the ground. There's no spring feeding them, right? There's no fresh, living, running water. It's just stagnant rainwater or whatever. So that's not the well he's talking about. He's talking about this spring-fed artesian well coming up out of you. It's a garden fountain. It's a fountain found in the garden for genuine life that Jesus and the Old Testament prophets spoke of. So look for those verses. He says you can feel this and focus on this. So instead of fear suppressing or capping off the desire of God's Spirit to overflow out of me, even with tears, right? In my dream, I was crying as I said this to her. And she cried. She broke down, right? And this changed everything. This is powerful. The power of love, this power oozing out of us. And not to be afraid, even with tears. I give the Spirit permission. I yield or submit or surrender. This is what you can do. This is what he's saying you can do. You can let it happen. Let go and let God. I give the Spirit permission. I yield or submit. He never forces himself on us. So I yield or submit or surrender to the power of love, to this power of love I'm feeling. To the power of love, and this is the armor, strength of the Lord. At Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 20 talks about the full armor of God. It's the nature of God. That is the full armor of God. Everything in there that you see described is in some respect a description of the power of love, the nature of God. Then the darkness of fear flees, just as Satan does. And there's verses in James that talk about this in 1 Peter. When I am under, you have to be under. This is the key. You have to be under, that is, submitted. That's the root meaning of submission or surrender. subjugated, under, subordinated, under the what? Under the oppressive authority of God. That's what we think, because we think of kings and we think of bad bosses and all this, but it's not like that in heaven. This is under the overwhelming light of God's love. There's a light of love. There's an under the light, the bright shining light of God's love, and this is what casts out the fear, darkness of fear. We have to be under the protective wings of the mother hen. As Jesus decided to be. A hen is female. That's the Holy Spirit again. And Jesus is saying, I'm going to be the Holy Spirit as a hen, and I'm going to protect my chicks. He didn't say the rooster. The chicks hang out underneath the female, not under the rooster. Ironically, now under the shadow of the Almighty. So the bright light of God's love is the shadow of the Almighty. Wow, if the shadow of the Almighty is the bright light of the Lord, then you can imagine how bright looking at the Father is. He's a consuming fire, it says.